Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here, and welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to continue on with the PSP InfiniStrip plugin and have a look at the compressor modules. Firstly, if you are new to my channel or new to my videos and you like what you see here, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So the compressor module in PSP InfiniStrip. Obviously this is one of the ones that people are going to be a lot more interested in checking out because everybody loves compressors. And we've covered off the overview in previous videos. We've covered off a couple of other modules as well. So this one is probably going to be a very interesting one for most people. So without further ado, let's just get in and check it out. All right, we are back in Cubase here, and we have our PSP InfiniStrip loaded up with a compressor module. So the compressors in here, okay, they offer three modules: an opto presser, a FET presser, and a VCA presser. Let's run through the descriptions in the manual. So the opto presser emulates the open sound of optical-based compressors. Suggested applications are processing vocals and buses. We then have the FET presser, which emulates the tight sound of a FET-based compressor. Suggested applications are processing guitars and drums. And then lastly, we have a VCA presser, which emulates the classic punchy sound of a VCA-based compressor. Suggested applications is processing buses. So, if you know anything about compressors, there's not a great deal to explain with these. It's pretty simple. We have a gain reduction meter, and I'm assuming all the settings are identical on every one. Sure looks like it. So, and this is the interesting approach they've taken with these compressors, which I did briefly describe in the overview, is that they have sort of gone against the tradition of emulating these compressors, because generally these compressors don't all have these settings. And they've done that so that you can obviously flick between them and keep the same settings. So it's good in one way, bad in another. If you're a traditionalist and don't want these controls and they shouldn't be used, well, then you may not like these. But anyway, let's run through it. So we've got our attack, which determines how fast the compressor responds and starts compressing when the audio goes above our threshold control here, which, as I said, here's our threshold control. This sets the level at what the audio has to go above to start getting compressed. And when the audio goes below it, it then goes by the release timer to how fast or slow it returns to normal and stops compressing. We have our ratio control, which determines how much compression we apply once we go above the threshold based on a ratio. We can go from 1 to 1, which is basically no compression whatsoever, all the way up to infinity to 1, which would basically make it a limiter. Okay, we have a mix control. So if we want to do some parallel style compression, we can use this mix control here to go from 0, which is fully original signal, no compression, anywhere in between up to 100, which is fully compressed. We then have a makeup control here, which basically sets our volume. So when we do compression, we naturally reduce the volume of our audio. So we usually push up the makeup gain to get the level back to normal. And what that inherently does is it actually brings up the low level sounds in your audio signal. A lot of people think that compressors bring up the level of the low, you know, the quiet parts. It's actually incorrect technically. What a compressor does is actually reduces the loud parts. We make the low quiet parts louder by using makeup gain. So inherently the compressor is raising the volume of the quiet parts, but only because we use the makeup gain. If we didn't use makeup gain, we would just notice that our audio trackers got a lot quieter. And it's actually, it's reduced the volume, reduced the peaks, made the peaks closer to the quiet parts. We haven't actually increased the volume of the quiet parts. We need to do that with the makeup gain. We have then this side chain here, which again, similar to what I've talked about in some of the other modules, this one here adjusts the detection of when the compressor will react. Okay, it does not change the actual audio signal. So it says high pass filter. It's not actually doing a high pass filter. What it is doing is it's doing a high pass filter on the detection circuit. So if we have a musical track which has a very loud kick, if we do not use this, the compressor will start compressing every time that kick goes above the threshold. Now, if we want the compressor to ignore the kick and only make its decisions on the rest of the instruments, then we can use this sidechain control here to set it to a frequency above the kick, and then the compressor will not respond to the kick. Now, when the compressor kicks in, it still compresses the kick, okay? It doesn't tell it what to compress. It just tells it what to listen to decide when to compress. We then have our usual controls down the bottom here, and we've got a side chain external, so we can trigger it with another track. So if we had a kick drum or something like that, and we wanted to create a pumping effect on our bus, we could have it side chain to our kick, so that every time the kick hit, the compressor would go and compress, pull down on our main track, and get a real pumping sound going. Right? We could do that. And the monitor button just lets us actually hear, just for testing purposes, what our side chain is listening to, or in the case of the internal one, we can get it to hear what the audio signal sounds like with this high pass filter on, so that we know what the detection circuit is listening to. Now, there is a difference if we run this in stereo. Okay, you can see here in the stereo version, the only difference is this the link button here, this link switch. So what this switch does is it links the internal sidechain channels to provide equal compression to left and right channels when processing a stereo track or a bus. So with the link switch activated, what it's going to do is it's going to compress equally on both the left and right channels, no matter what's happening. So if you have a sudden burst of audio on the left channel that triggers the compressor, with the link on, it's going to do compression on the left and right. That, in theory, keeps the stereo effect or the unbalance that you have deliberately made in your mix, let's assume it's deliberate, to remain. It will still pull down and compress, but it will keep that unevenness there. If you turn the link off, what it allows it to do, that if there is a burst in the left channel, it will compress the left channel and not the right channel, and then could sort of pull your mix more even. But that can also have a negative impact, because it could also make it sound weird if you've gone for deliberate effects that are left-right. It could start throwing your stereo balance out. So it's something worth trying and just seeing which one gives you the better result for your song. So I'm going to turn that off for the moment, because we are going to stick with this bass for the moment. All right, so this is our bass. I've just muted it. Okay. Now if we just bring it in straight away, we'll go through the controls so we can see we are getting compression already. So like the threshold here will determine how much. If I go down here, we are extremely compressing. If I go up here, we're doing nothing. All right, it's never going above the threshold. Let's go back. So we can control how much compression is happening by the threshold. This is where there's always a play between these controls, because we can also then determine with the ratio how much is happening. So that's set to infinity, or you can go to 1 to 1 and we'll do none. No matter where we set this threshold. So you can hear when I go to infinity how squashed that's making it. So we'll just put it back to the middle for the moment. Now we can also determine how quickly we want it to respond. So if we want the transients of the bass to get through, we could slow the attack down. Oops. Or if we speed it up, we will impact the transients. So if we go for a very extreme setting again, just to over-emphasize this, right? So you can hear it's impacting that transient, extremely squashing it. If we want the transient to come through, we just slow it down. So we're letting that transient through now, as opposed to here, where it's just squashed to heck. And it depends on your instrument there. Now the release is the other way. How quickly do we release? Alright, so we pull it back here. We'll very quickly let the compressor go, which will naturally bring up the tail. Especially when we do our makeup gain here. Now that's interesting, that makeup gain. Is that doing it automatically? I don't remember adjusting that. Wouldn't think so. If we have a long release, you'll see it doesn't really ever stop compressing. So it's even compressing the tail. Whereas you go fast, you'll hear the low end rumble on the end of the bass pick up. Now, our other option here is that we could go pretty heavy with our compression. So let's, we'll go 6 to 1, something like that. Let's go fairly fast. Gotta knock that transient off. So I like to set my makeup gain so that when I mute and unmute, it sounds similar. So listen to the tail of this. Now if I bring the compressor in, you can hear that tail comes up, but we're also squishing the top. But what the point was is I was going to show was I over compress. Now here's our mix down to 0, it's no compression. So you might want to add a bit of both. And then, as I said, we've got this side chain here, so now, interestingly enough, the default was to have it set to 100, which maybe you don't want with the bass. But if you did that, you can hear I've got the monitor on. We're not really hearing much at all, so only responding to the very clack of the bass. I'm actually going to set it off. All right, so let's put it something more reasonable again. I'm going to slow the attack down, speed up the release. Now we'll go 100%. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll flick through the different compressors and we'll see what the difference is. Might turn this up a little bit. Is a very aggressive compressor. Now with the FET compressor, what I'm interested about is that you usually can get a pretty gnarly effect. Get some distortion going on if you overcompress a hell of a lot. So then what you could do is, again, you could do the mix control here if you want to overcompress like that. Okay, so let's actually try and let's put it on some drums here. Drums is always a good example. All right, let's chuck a FET compressor on. So if you listen to the drums here, you can hear the extra sort of life, brings up a bit of the room, just adds more liveliness to the drums, more excitement to the drums. So just have a listen again. volume and increase. We'll drop that down. Now, if we wanted to squash the drums, we could reduce the attack. You had squashing the kick and snare. Now, again, common trick with this is sort of to do parallel compression, so really squash it up here. And then we just blend in. So you can hear there, when I do before, you can hear that snare really stands out. It's really peaky. This one here brings it back into the drums, makes the drums sound a bit more solid, a bit more contained. That snare pop out. The snare still sounds powerful, but it's just brought back in a little bit. Now, if we switch between them again, you know, not as aggressive sounding. Definitely, if you want the aggressive sound, you need to go for the FET presser. Now, I guess that's the one big difference with this module here is we can set it to be very fast, whereas traditionally you wouldn't have these controls on an opto compressor, an optical compressor. So generally they work quite slow. So the fact that we're actually, I guess in theory, we're almost breaking the traditional attitude of the optical compressor because we're giving it the same speed that we can do with the FET presser, which is not what normally happens in the hardware version. All right, let's play with the VCA one this time, but let's go over to our song, which was the stereo one. Okay, so we'll pull that up there. We'll bring it in. We'll start off with the VCA. We'll still compare, but to me, this resembles probably like the SSL compressor, G control. Yeah, the G. All right, so let's go with something let's go with a 2 to 1. I'm going to go with a fairly slow attack. Actually, let's just leave it at medium. Why not? it down a little bit. Now, normally what you would do with one of these is you would just sort of have the meter just a little bit pretty subtle, you'd want it. So let's just have a quick look at some presets here. Let's see what that is. So master track. Let's have a look at what they do for master track here. So they do a fairly quick attack. Yeah, pretty reasonable release there. 8:1 ratio, really? Okay, and then they do a mix blend. Now, the trick with doing presets in compressors, always keep in mind they have no idea how loud your audio is, so you will generally have to adjust the threshold to get what you think they were trying to get. We don't know how much gain reduction they were targeting for this, so we need to make some assumptions or just go with something we think sounds good. Because they might want more compression than that, or they might want less. And they're actually filtering out up to 1K. So they're ignoring the kick. So with the link deactivated, in theory, it should be listening to the left and right channels independently. Now, if you've got a pretty well-balanced mix, you may not hear anything at all in difference there. So let's have a look at some other ones. What have we got? Soft compression. Now, if you want to hear something pretty obvious between the different modules here, have a listen to the guitar that comes in the left and right ears. You can hear it, they sort of, they get lower in volume for the optopressor, but the FET and the VCA, it's a lot more apparent. You can hear them quite clearly. Just get to the bit again. So listen to this bit. So hopefully you heard that and you like what you hear there. Obviously we've got great options here. We've got 3 traditional compressors that get used all the time, right? And as I explained before, we can load multiples because we have a dedicated compressor channel and we have 2 inserts, 2 optionals that we can have 3 compressors if we so choose. So I guess to do an example of that, if we close that down, let's just go back to our bass, but let's go to another bass maybe. So let's start with a FET presser. And what I might do is let's go pretty fast and let's try and take off some of the transients of the bass. I just want to take the peaks off. And we go pretty hard. Okay, so we're trying to pull back on some of those clacky transients there. Now let's chuck on another one. So let's say we go for the opto this time, and we just want to do a bit of smooth compression now after this compressor. So let's keep it, we'll go a little bit fast, but not too fast. And we'll release pretty quickly. Let's take that down. Alright, should have had those off there. So we're adding a lot more girth to this bass now. So whether this is the best approach for this bass is questionable, but this is quite a common technique for vocals, that sort of thing, to double compress. And, you can use different flavors of compressors. You could use 2 of the same compressors. You could use whatever you like, right? The options are obviously there for you. And then, add a VCA compressor on your bus as well on top of that. And, you're going to have a very nice, contained, tight sounding instrument or song, whatever you so choose. So there you go. There is the compressor module in PSP InfiniStrip plugin. Let me know what you think about the compressors. Are there any additional compressors you would love to see in here? Let me know what you think about the fact that you could switch between these modules and retain the same settings and What are your thoughts on the fact that they allow you to change settings that you can't traditionally change on the actual hardware units of some of these compressors? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Love to hear your opinion of that. Would you like the ability to be able to turn off that feature and adhere to the traditional compressor, or have the ability, make it selectable? Again, I would love to hear your opinion on that. And like I said, any other compressors that you would love to see added to this plugin suite, please leave it in the comments below. If you did like the video, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. Hopefully the video has been helpful. I thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.